Bueno, la verdad que tenemos ahora un orador que el año pasado nos compartió, como les decíamos, el estudio de cómo liderar las marcas regenerativas, y Pablo había presentado un adelanto en el que hablábamos de, bueno, que esas marcas atravesaban 5 paradigmas. El poder, que fue el que yo mencioné, el poder con, en vez del poder sobre, pero también el espacio, el tiempo, el liderazgo y el relacionamiento. Y cómo para triunfar deben pensar y actuar de nuevas maneras. Rafael, les voy a leer un poquito de su bio. Va a venir a profundizar todos estos temas y es fundador de BBMG, pero es un defensor apasionado de un nuevo enfoque de la marca que utiliza la sostenibilidad y el proceso social para crear valor compartido. Es un experto en estrategias de marketing, tiene una carrera riquísima, pero sobre todo, por suerte tuvimos la oportunidad de tener una hermosa cena el lunes y conocerlo, y bueno, pero por sobre todo es un convencido, es una persona súper genuina que está poniendo todo lo de sí para tener una nueva mirada y para poder ayudarnos a cambiar el mundo. Así que bueno, sin más, los dejo con Raphael Bemporad.
Bueno. Hola, buen día. ¿Cómo están? Bien. Bueno, me llamo Raphael Bemporad. Es un gran placer estar con todos ustedes aquí en este teatro fabuloso, en esta ciudad maravillosa. Y quiero decir muchas gracias a Mariana, Gabriela, Pablo, Benavides por esta invitación muy generosa y también la oportunidad a compartir esta conversación de regeneración y también que compartimos los sueños y ideas y oportunidades. Cambio por el idioma de inglés porque quiero hablar un poco más preciso de las cosas que tengo, pero después seguramente hablamos en cualquier idioma que nos sirva. Y sobre todo quiero decir gracias por esta oportunidad. Bueno, empezamos juntos. Listo. Okay. So last time, many of you were here to experience Pablo Benavides, who shared a new context, a new set of paradigms for regenerative leadership. And what I'd like to do today is to sort of build on that conversation, from moving from the context to the practice. And so I'll focus for a couple minutes on what does it look like, how might we design regenerative brands. I'm here from an organization in Brooklyn, New York, called BBMG. And we're 20 years old. And for 20 years, we've been working at the intersection of brand sustainability and social impact. And today, what I'd like to do is bring a perspective that we're developing through 4 moments. The first is a reflection on the moment that we're sharing right now. And we heard from Ruben about this precipice toward artificial intelligence, a moment where we have 10 years to hopefully keep the planet's systems in balance, incredible inequality, economically, socially, racially. And so we're at a moment. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about the moment we're in. Then I'll talk about the role that brands can play in fueling the shift toward the future that we want to be part of. And then we'll talk a little bit about some research that we've done with a partner called GlobeScan all around the world about what's emerging in the experience of young people. And then finally, how might we explore the new practice of brand design, brand strategy, brand experience development that can help us truly regenerate the world. So one of my favorite authors is a philosopher named Charles Eisenstein. And Charles Eisenstein has said that we are living in the space between stories. The old story, which in his concept is something we've inherited from the middle of the last century, was a consumer economy based on growth without limits, where material possessions created value in our lives. And we're clearly at the end of that story. that no longer serves us and has created the precipice of so many challenges in our life, economically, socially, culturally. However, he said, in this space in between, the new story doesn't yet exist. It's emerging, like Florencia and Gisela talked about. It's just starting to emerge, and it's fragile. And so what does it mean to live and to create inside this space in between? My friend Laura Galinsky has used the word liminal. Oops, sorry, let me go back. Here we go. And it's a really interesting word in English. It says relating to a transition or initial stage of a process, and liminal means occupying a position at both sides of a threshold or a boundary. And we're living in a liminal moment, a space in between. And in this space in between, there's a wonderful author named Joanna Macy. And before I get to this quote, in the space in between, Joanna says there's three parts very similar to theory U theory. The first story in the space in between is the reckoning of business as usual. The second story is the great unraveling that we see around us every day. But the third story is the great turning, and she calls it the great adventure of our life. And here's what Joanna Macy says. So this is where we begin, by acknowledging that our times confront us with realities that are painful to face, difficult to take in, and confusing to live with. Our approach is to see this as the starting point for an amazing journey that strengthens us and deepens our aliveness. The purpose of this journey is to find, to offer, to share, and receive the gift of hope in action. And so, with this in mind, I'd like to talk a little bit about what is the role that brands can play in fueling the shift. And I believe that brands are part of that arrow between the world we're in and the world that we want. And the reason why I feel like brands can play a profound role is, as far as I know, brands are the unique element in civilization that combine the systems we design and the stories that we tell. The systems we design include our business models, our relationship with every stakeholder, where our products and services come from, the materials we use, how they're made, who makes them, how they're treated, their lives, as well as how we use them and what happens afterwards. So that's all system design. But brands are also the manifestation of the stories that we tell. Who am I? What matters to me? What gives my life meaning and our collective life meaning? What does it mean to belong? And what is community? And so brands are the unique combination of the systems we design and the stories that we tell. And this is our opportunity to rethink the systems and retell the stories. As we do that, we have to recognize that we have to redesign the systems to change business, redesign products and services to change commerce, and retell the stories to shift culture. And this isn't linear. It's not one thing after the other. It has to happen all at the same time. So how might we do that? And in particular, how might brands fuel the shift to the future that we want to be part of? So I'd like to talk a little bit about some research that we and our colleagues at GlobeScan did over the last year. We did a survey of 30,000 people in 30 different countries. And we were asking, what matters most in your life? There we go. What matters most in your life? What is your vision of the future? And how might brands and or business play a role in the future that you want to be part of to regenerate our world? And I just want to share a little bit about what we learned. The first is that young people under age 30 all around the world are personally feeling the impact of climate change in their daily life. Pablo Benavides talked about this last time. 78% say that they have personally been affected. And it used to be, oh, climate change perhaps one day in the future. Climate maybe some other place, not where I live. But now it's in my life now. And in Latin America, 87% of the overall population say, I have experienced the impact of climate change personally. For young people, it's quite profound because they're starting to feel guilt about it, and they have a feeling of culpability for their negative impact on the environment. As you can see, young people under age 30, 61% say, I feel guilty for my negative impact. And in the United States, Generation Z is 7 times more likely than boomers to strongly feel this sense of guilt. At the same time, and this is very profound and devastating, there's a sense of anxiety about the future and the future being stolen from me for young people. 44% of young people around the world say they do not want to have children because of the impacts of climate change. So it's very, very profound, the sense of anxiety and guilt and experience. However, there's a contradiction because young people also are telling us that they need material possessions in order to feel happy compared to older generations, or that part of what they want in their life is that they can stand out for the way that they look, or their style. And so we have a paradox, we have a conundrum that young people are telling us they're feeling this intensity, and at the same time they want to live a full life. And they're asking, how can I live fully? And also be part of creating a future that means something to me. There's a wonderful author in the United States named Adrienne Marie Brown. And she said, you can't create the future that you want by draining your life of color today. It has to be both. We have to be enlivened today. And young people are asking us that's what they want. And so looking ahead, it was really interesting when we went deeper into behavior. And this is a very profound difference. When we looked at shopping habits, young people are 40 percentage points more likely to say that they want to share products and services with others in the community. They want to share and purchase products secondhand. They want to buy products, particularly food, in returnable containers, refillable and reusable containers. They want to avoid products that are disposable. They want products that are made of recycled materials and that can be infinitely recycled. And so young people are telling us they're ready for us to show up. There's a big difference. There's also for young people, even in the complexity of these paradoxes, there's a desire and a belief that the future can be better. We asked, in the next 10 years, do you believe most people will be living a sustainable life? And young people in the color said, yes, we believe people will be buying secondhand, sharing and renting instead of owning, having a more zero-waste lifestyle and eating more plants. And so young people are filled with this dynamic tension, feeling the anxiety, wanting a new way, and asking for a different and better way to live. And so with that in mind, I'd like to talk a little bit about a segmentation model when we looked at all of the data to identify 3 different kinds of consumers that can help us understand how brands can create this shift in the economy, in our society, for our environment, and for culture. And the 3 segments are the shifters, which is 47%, the pragmatists, who are 36%, and the traditionals, who are 17%. And on the y-axis is concern about climate change, and on the x-axis is connection to brands, materialism, and participation in the economy or the market. So what we see is that for the shifters, again, it's a large part of the population. They're more likely to be young, slightly higher income, more educated, more urban, more diverse, much more influential on social media, and overrepresent toward the West in the United States. You can see 45% believe that they need material goods to be happy, compared to only 24% of the general population, and 59% are interested in these new ways of connecting in commerce, like buying secondhand. And the future the shifters want is to feel like they are innovators, they're trendsetters and pioneers in a new way of living and being. And so the shifters are a big part of what can unlock the power of brands to create regeneration. The pragmatists are also a very large part of the population, and they're more likely to be female, they're older, they're often living in suburbs, and what we heard from the pragmatists is that they're really focused on health and well-being. They appreciate sustainable products when they make life easier, simpler, and more efficient. And they're looking for quality and performance. However, sustainability becomes an incredible additional bonus. 82% are focused on their own and their family's mental health. And they're starting to say that they see environmentally friendly products as more expensive. And the future that they want are products and services that function well, that save them money and make life easier. And then the third are the traditionals, 17%. They're older, they are more likely to be white, they're more likely to live in rural areas and have children at home. And they prioritize their family and their own health above all. They're somewhat suspicious of sustainability and also of marketing and brands, and they're not interested in changing their behavior. 81% they said they want more time with family, and 56% say people are exaggerating the situation with climate change. What they want is to protect their family and their existing way of life from an increasing speed of change. So what do we do appreciating these three kinds of consumers? Well, with the shifters, we create the change. We innovate new business models. We shift culture. We change aspirations. We shape belief and behavior. And it's a very powerful way to create the next stage of commerce. Then, as new ideas start to take hold and become more accessible, more affordable, with more ease, the pragmatists help us scale new models in the marketplace. And then the traditionals, interestingly, they may not be part of the change. They'll do it when it doesn't require them to change their behavior. However, I'm very curious for the traditionals, what is so sacred in their life that they're holding on to? That's a very deep question. What matters in their experience that they're holding? So, with this shift between stories, this space, appreciating the conundrums and the paradox of young people's experience, and knowing how we can shift, scale, and protect values, what does it look like to build a regenerative brand for this future? So at BBMG, we've identified three characteristics that are really at the core of building a regenerative brand. The first is being aware, sensing and serving the deepest and truest needs of people in society. The second is additive, giving more than we take and being a generative part of a living, interconnected ecosystem. And then the third is alive, which means that it's creating energy and momentum in culture, and it's shaping who we are and how we live. And I'll very briefly share a little bit about each one and what it might mean for how we design together. So the first is aware, which is sensing and satisfying the needs that are most profound of people and society. And regenerative brands are aware of these dynamic tensions. They appreciate the paradox and at the same time the challenges and the aspirations that we feel. And there are three shifts to keep in mind to build brands that are aware. The first is from listening to sensing. Listening is what people say. Sensing is what people don't say, but feel and experience. Research to reflection, research is about the market, a consumer, a context. Reflection is our own role and complicity in the problems that we're trying to solve. And then perspective seeking is trying to ask for someone's experience. Perspective taking is proximity and walking the path with them. And inside of the idea of being aware as a brand, some examples that I love, there is a organic beer brand in the United States, Michelob Ultra. And they're the leading organic brand. However, in speaking with farmers, they identified a big problem. Only 1% of all farmland in the United States is organic. So without more organic land, there's no more organic beer. And so they created Contract for Change, which did the following. It said, because it takes 3 years to transition land from traditional to organic, they said to the farmers who signed up, we'll pay you exactly what you're making today for 3 years, even as your yields go down, because you're using fewer chemicals before they go back up in organic farming. And at the end of 3 years, we will guarantee you a contract to provide material and ingredients for our beer. And so thousands of farmers all over the country are able to move toward organic farming through the Contract for Change because the business was aware of a system problem and a trap that family farmers were facing. The second is Puma, the apparel brand, and their Voices of Regeneration. They've invited 4 environmental youth activists into their team to challenge their assumptions, to critique their sustainability strategy, and to hold them accountable for the promises that they're making. IKEA obviously is in the furnishings business, but in the United Kingdom, over 1 million people are on waiting lists for affordable housing, and 2.5 million people cannot pay their rent every month. And if people are not able to afford housing, they're not able to participate in IKEA's products and services. So IKEA has created a policy campaign to help affordable housing grow for more families. And they've turned their employees into life-at-home coaches, which help people plan for mortgages, help people plan for savings, because they recognize their interconnection with the public and people who currently are struggling to find a home. As it relates to additive, and we think about what does it mean to be additive, to ultimately give more than we take. Regenerative brands recognize our interdependence and that we are part of a living ecosystem together. So our opportunity is to move from an extractive model to one that's enriching, from holding power to sharing power, and ultimately from thinking from one perspective, business, individual, community, to interconnected to all living things. And so a great example is as we move toward a circular economy in circular fashion, another tomorrow's created digital tags that go inside of clothing. What it allows you to do is to know the entire story from the farmer to the seamster, to the person who transported it, to where it was sold, to the person who bought it again. And it creates the entire story, both for transparency, for authenticity, and also to understand what you are part of. Next month, Allbirds, which is a shoe company, will release the first ever zero carbon shoe. The process using biomaterials actually sequesters carbon in the production process. So the shoe at the end of the process creates no extra carbon in the atmosphere. It's the first time it's ever been done. And then third, we worked at BBMG with a retailer in the United States called Target. And Target we worked with them to create Target Zero, which was a curation of all of the products with no packaging, with either refillable or reusable packaging, or things that are biodegradable. And the point of Target Zero is to make it easy for the mainstream audience to choose a life with less waste, to get the products that they seek in ways that don't create environmental and social harms. And then finally, what does it mean to be alive? To ultimately shape who we are and how we live. And the thing about this is that all of this happens not only because we design a beautiful business model or a great product, but because culture changes to create demand and aspiration and desire for a new way. And it's moving from being reactive to changes to being in flow and being agile and adapted, a part of culture in a synergistic way. Design for, instead of designing for, what does it mean to design with? No design for me without me as a participant. And then ultimately, to move toward a loop of progress versus assuming that there's ever going to be perfection, because this is a natural process as well. And so there was an incredible campaign in South Africa that was called the Soccer Song for Change, Football Mundial. And what happened was a group of gender equality leaders took the field to sing the national anthem of South Africa in the derby in Cape Town between the two big soccer teams. And so the women were in a circle in the middle of the field, and they started by singing the national anthem. Halfway through the national anthem, they changed the words to say, why is it that after soccer games, men beat their spouses and their children? Why is it that so many men are not taking accountability for the violence they're creating for women in our society? And the entire stadium went to a complete silence. And people said, what's happening here? And it created a cultural movement, including a new department in the South African government focused on preventing gender violence. In the United States, we have something called Black Friday, which is the day after Thanksgiving, and it kicks off the holiday shopping period, which is pretty overly commercial, of course. And what happened for Google is they thought, how might we take all of our technology in search and start to put people to be more aware of Black-owned businesses? So the artists Ludacris and Flo Milli, both rappers in the United States, created a song and a video that showed over 70 different Black-owned businesses. And then Crocs, of course, is the shoe. They're committing to absolutely zero carbon in the supply chain, and they're using sugarcane waste in order to create the materials in their shoe, and welcoming a whole generation to comfort and experience without the carbon. And so where are we in this story as we imagine the space in between? And overall, what I'd like to invite is there's so much creativity at our hands. We can appreciate being in the space in between, but this space in between gives us a choice and an opportunity for fulfillment, for love, for connection. And what I invite is what Charles Eisenstein said. He gave a speech about a month ago, and he asked, what's going to happen in the next 5 years, and what does it mean for the future that we want? And here's what he asked. As we embrace a future that we cannot fully know, as Ruben shared about artificial intelligence and so many changes, how do we hold integrity? How do we stay true? And Charles Eisenstein asked us to think about the following questions, if we could. So, what is the story that's emerging that we want to hold? He said, to navigate what's next, let's ask, who am I and who do I become when I inhabit this story? And when this story inhabits me? Is this who I really am? How do I feel? Does it make me energized to live my day? Is it a future that makes sense? And is this a future I want to be part of? So today, as we think about regeneration, as we join together as a community, as we embrace a world we cannot know but that we dream of, let's hold these questions close. Let's allow them in as we answer intimate questions in our daily life and in our work. Because as Charles Eisenstein says, the more beautiful world we all know is possible is closer than we think. Muchas gracias. Gracias totales.